first batch in. Excuse me. Recorder keeps like clogged up. Not sure what. gonna get baking. I goofed up. Anyways, my bagels are just coming to the surface. I wet my boards. Hamlin towns in Brunswick, my famous Hanover city. The river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasant spot you've never spied, but when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats, and bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheeses from the vats, and nicked the soup from the cook's own ladles, split open the kegs with salted sprats, made nests of the men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last, the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is naughty, and as for our corporation, shocking. Think we buy gowns lined with ermine, for dolts who can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese to find in furry civic robes ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking, to find the remedy we are lacking, or sure as fate will send you packing." At this the mayor and corporation quaked with mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "For a guilder eyed my urban gown sell. I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I scratch it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Jissy said this what should hap at the chamber door but a gentle tap. "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that?" With the corporation as he sat, looking little through wondrous fat. Nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister than a too long open oyster, save when at noon his paunch grew mutinous for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. "Come in," cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long queer coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes, each like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek, nor beard on chin, but lips or smile went out and in. There was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, "It's as my great-grandsire, starting up with a trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone." He advanced towards the council table, and "Please, your honour," said he, "I am able, by means of secret charm to draw all the creatures living beneath the sun, the crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper." And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match with his coat the selfsame check, and at scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers they noticed were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing, upon this pipe, as low it dangled, over his vesture so old-fangled. "Yes," said he, "Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I friend the Cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I eased in Asia the Nizam of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders?" 50,000 was the exclamation of an astonished mayor and corporation. Into the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what matter slept in his quiet pipe smile. Like a musical adept to blow his pipe, his lips he wrinkled. In green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled. Like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, he heard as if an army muttered. And muttering grew to a grumbling. The grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling. And out of the houses came the rats tumbling. Great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, gray rats, tawny rats, grave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives. From street to street pipe advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river westward, wherein all plunged and perished, save one who stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home his commentary, which was, at first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe, into the cider presses bright, and moving away pickle tub boards, and leaving a jar of conserve cupboards, and drawing the corks of train oil flasks, and breaking hoops of butter casks, and it seemed as if a voice, sweeter far than by harbored by Solari's breathe, called out, "O rats, rejoice! The world has grown to a vast dry saltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just a bulky sugar punch on, already staved like a great sun shone. Gracious, scarce an inch before me, just as me thought it said, come bore me. I found the west rolling over me. You should have heard the Hamlin people ring the bells as they rock the steeple. Go, cried the mayor, get long poles, poke up the nest and block up the holes. Consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats. When suddenly up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace, with the first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders! The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too. For council dinners made rare havoc with parade, South, in the Grove Hawk, and half the money would replenish their seller's biggest butt of Rhenish, to pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat of red and yellow. Besides, quoth America, knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink. What's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink, no matter of money to put in your poke. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you well know, wasn't joke. Besides, their losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders, come take 50. The piper's face fell and he cried, no trifling, I can't wait beside. I promised to visit by dinner time Baghdad, and accept the prime of the head cook's pottage. All he's rich in, having left in the killer's kitchen, of a nest of scorpions no survivor. With him I proved no bargain driver, with you don't think I'll bait a stiver. And folks put me in a passion, they find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I brook, being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a rival, with idle pipe and vesture piebald? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, to his lips again laid his long pipe, a smooth straight cane, and ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as yet musicians cunning never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustling that seemed like a bustling, and merry crowds adjusting and pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, little tongues chattering, and like foals in the farm and barley is scattering, out came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping around merrily after, wonderful music with shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb and the council stood as if they're changed into blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, to the children merrily sweeping by. Could only follow with an eye the joyous crowd at the piper's back, and how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat as the piper turned from the high street to where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. How he returned from south to west, and to Copperberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, he's forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced, and the children followed. When all were in to the very last, the door on the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, and could not dance the whole of the way. And in after years, if you blame his sadness, he used to say, it's dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all those pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. For he led us, he said, to a joyous land, joining the town as just at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, the flowers of forth a fairer view, and everything was strange and new. The sparrow was bright and peacock here, your dogs are run a fellow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with the eagle's wings. Just as I became assured, my lame folk be speedily cured. The music stopped, and I stood still, and found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now weeping as before, and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas for Hamelin, there came into many a burgher's pate, a text that says at heaven's gate, hopes the rich at his easy rate, as the needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor said east, west, north, and south, called for the piper by word of mouth, wherever was men's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if only he'd return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. But when they saw it was lost endeavor, the piper and dancers were gone forever. They made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year, these words do not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, in the better memory to fix the place of the children's last retreat, they called it the Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing piper tabor was sure for his future lose his labor, nor suffered they hostel or tavern, shocked with mirth the street so solemn. And opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and on a great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away, and there it stands this very day. And I must not admit to say that in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress of which their neighbors lay such stress to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison into which they were Japan a long time ago in a mighty band out of Hamlin towns and Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers, scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats or from mice, if we promise them aught, let us keep our promise. There once was a young man named Roland Pye who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park and playing his recorder to rest a while from all his baking when suddenly he spied a corpse lying on the ground beneath the swarm of flies. He put down his recorder, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead man with stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed. From that day on, Roland Pye was the happiest baker alive. He would bake until he was tired, then he'd pull his recorder out of his pocket while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame. So the mayor devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning, he said that Roland was a good worker, but lazy. Next, he said that Roland baked a whole lot, but badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. Therefore, Roland Pye took his recorder and left his home behind. When he came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old busker and asked him for work to keep body and mind together. "Come along with me," said the old man, "and we will share alms." So Roland Pine and the old man started going around and singing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for your health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the ravens and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker, and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland they said, "What is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pine. "That's what you say. There is a king with so many hungry soldiers that he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pine went to the king's kitchen and took the old man his alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been used by anyone. Roland mixed the dough, then he rolled it into rings. Then he boiled them, dressed them with seeds. Then he baked them until they were golden brown. Then he tossed them into a crate to cool down. Whenever Roland wearied of baking, he would play his recorder. And once he was weary of playing his recorder, he would sing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for your health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the ravens and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker, and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Hearing them singing, a princess looked out the window. She saw Roland and fell in love with him. But she was a princess, and he a baker. The king would never consent to their marriage. So they decided to run away together. They fled at night in a boat. When they were already on the high seas, Roland remembered the busker. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man. Since he shared his alms with me, we can't go off and leave him like that." At that very moment, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, "We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I own. Now you have the king's daughter, must give half of her to me." At this, he gave Roland Pine a knife to cut his bride in two. Roland Pine took the knife with a trembling hand. "You are right. You are perfectly right." He was on the point of cutting his bride in half when suddenly the old man stopped him. "Stop. I knew you were a just man. I am the dead man, mind you, whom you covered with stones. Go now, and may the two of you always be happy." The old man walked away on the waves. The boat came to an island rich in all good things, with a princely palace waiting the newlyweds. My first thought was he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, asking to watch the working of his lie on mine, and mouth scarce able to afford suppression of the glee, the person scored its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be sent for with his staff? What saved the waylay with his lies and snare? Old travelers who might find him posted there. A nasty road. I guess what skull-like laugh would break, what crutch can write my epitaph for pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. If as his counsel I should turn aside to ominous tracks which will agree hides the dark tower, yet acquiescingly I did turn as he pointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end descried, so much as gladness some end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost not fit to cope with that obstreperous joy success would bring. I hardly tried now to rebuke the spring, my heart being finding failure in its scope. As a sick man very near to death seems dead indeed, and feels beginning in the tears, and takes a farewell of each friend, and hears one bid the other go, draw breath freely outside, since all is over, he saith, and the blow fallen no grieving can amend. While some discusseth here the graves be room enough for this, one a day suits best for carrying the corpse away, with caribou banners, scarfs, and staves, and still the man hears all and only craves, he may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus I had for so long suffered in this quest, heard failure prophesied so oft being writ, so many times among the band who wit, the knights who two dark towers search addressed their steps, the gist to fail is they seem best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as despair I turned from him, that hateful cripple, out of his highway into the path he pointed, all the day being a dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close, yet shot one grim red leer to see the plain catch its stray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged the plain after a pace or two, and pausing for back at the last few, over the safe road 'twas gone, gray plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon's bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw so starved a global nature. Nothing throve, for flowers as well expect the cedar grow, or turtle and spurge according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You think a bird had been a treasure trove. No penury inertness in grimace, in some strange sort were the land's portion. See or close your eyes, said nature peevishly. If nothing skills, I can't help my case. 'Tis last judgment's fire must cure this place. Calcine its clods and set my prisoners free. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mates, its head was chopped. The bents were jealous else, what made the holes and rents in the dock's harsh swartz leaves, bruised to balk all hope of greenness. 'Tis a brute must walk, cashing their life out with the brute's intents. As for the grass, it grew as scarce as hair in leprosy. Thin, dry blades pricked the mud which underneath was kneaded up with blood. One stiff, blind horse, his every bone is stared, stood stupefied however he came there, thrust out past service from the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red, gaunt, and calloused neck astray, and shut eyes beneath the rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart, as a man calls for wine before he fights. I asked one draught of earlier, happier sights. Ere fitly I could hope to play the part. Think first, fight afterwards, the soldier's art. One taste of old times sets all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's reddening face beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt it fold. An arm in mine to fix me to that place. That way he used. Alas, one night's disgrace. How at my heart's be fire and left it cold. Giles, then, the soul of honor, there he stands, frank as 10 years ago and knighted first. An honest man should dare, he said he durst. Good, but the scene shifts. Fall went hangman's hand, pinned to his breast the parchment. His own band reads it, poor traitor spit upon and cursed. Better this present little pass like that, back therefore to my darkening path. No sound of sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howlet or a bat, I asked, when something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden little river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came, no tides congenial to the glooms. This as it frothed by, might have been a bath, the fiend's loin hoof, to see the wrath of its black eddies be spat with flakes and spoons. So petty yet so spiteful, all along low scrubby alders kneeled over it, drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rout despair, a suicidal throng, the river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by to turn no whit. Which while I forded, good saints, how I feared to set my foot upon a dead man's cheek, each step or field spear I thrust to seek, hollows tangled in his hair or beard, it may have been a water rat I speared, but ugh, it sounded like a baby's shriek. Glad was I to reach the other bank, now for a better country. Vain presage, who were the strugglers? What war did they wage? Whose savage trample could thus pad the dank soil to a plash? Toads in a poisoned tank, or wild cats in a red-hot cage. More than that, a furlong off. The fight must so have seemed in that foul cirque. What penned them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading through that horrid muse. None out of it. Mad Druids set to work their brains, no doubt, like galley slaves at hurt. Pigs for his pastime, Christians against Jews. And more than that, a furlong on, why there? What bad use was that engine for? That wheel or brake? Not wheel, that harrow fit to reel men's bodies out like silk. With all the air of prophet's tool, on earth left unaware, or brought to sharpen its rusty teeth of steel. Then came some stub ground, once wood, next to marsh it would seem, now mere earth, desperate and dunless, so the fool finds mirth, makes a thing and mars it, till his route changes and off he goes, within a rude bog, clay and marsh, sand spots, dark black earth. Now blotches rankling colors gay and groom, now patches worse than leanness of the soils, moss or substances like oils. Then came a palsy to a cleft in him, a distorted mouth that splits its rim, gaping at death and dies while it recoils. As far as ever from the end, not in the distance but the evening not, to point my footsteps at the thought, the great black bird of Paulion's bosom string, sailed past nor beat his wide wings, dragon pen, brushed my cap perchance the guide I sought. For looking up where I somehow grew, the plain had given place all round with mountains with such names and grace and heights and heaps now stolen in view. How thus they surprised me solving you, how to get from there was no clear case. Yet half I seemed to recognize some trick of mischief had happened to me, God knows when. In a bad dream perhaps, here ended then progress this way, when in the very nick of giving up one more time, came a click as when the trap shuts you're in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once, this was the place, those two hills crouched like two bulls locked horn in horn in fight, while to the left a tall scout mountain, dunce daughter to dozing at the very nunts, after a lifetime of training for the sight. One in the midst lay but the tower itself, the round squat turret, blind as a fool's heart, built of brown stone without a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest's mocking out, points the shipman thus the unseen shelf, he strikes on only when timbers start. Not see, because of night perhaps, why day came back for that. Behind it left the dying sunset, kindled to a cleft, the hills like two giants in hunting lay, chin upon hand to see the game at bay, they'll stab and end the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears, of lost adventurers my peers, how such was strong and such was bold, and such was fortunate, yet each of old, lost when moment knelled the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside met, to view the last of me, a living frame, for one more picture in a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet, dauntless, a slug going to my lips, I sat and blew, child Roland to a dark tower came. when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal stations to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect of the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, government instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And experience accordingly has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer when evils are sufferable than right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they have become accustomed. But when long training of injuries and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces the design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, to provide new guards for their future security. Such as being the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute despotism, absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good.